right or wrong.
The world is the way it is.
We believe the Bible is the authoritative word.
There is no real, inherent, definable purpose as to why we are here, why we exist.
There are no mistakes. There really aren't any.
Bad things happen sometimes to good people because God's trying to get their attention. Happy Memorial Day. Thanks for joining us, whether you're here on campus or online. We're glad that you're here this morning. We've been in a series called You Asked For, where you guys have been driving the topic of conversation on Sunday mornings by the questions that you've submitted. So you've been asking some great questions, things like, why is there suffering in the world? What role does the church have in certain things? And then does prayer work, such as we talked about last week? This morning, we're getting to a real heavy one, so we're just going to jump right in because there's a lot of information to cover, so hopefully you guys can grab on tight and keep up. We're going to start by bringing up a couple of headlines from this last couple of weeks that have been in the news. This first one says this on ABC News: U.S. ambassador assures Syrian refugees more help is coming. You see the picture of those guys. The next one, Manchester attack. Suspect visited Syria and had proven ties to ISIS, French minister says. Back home here in the U.S., Senator Paul says we can't have an open border with the Middle East. And so at the bottom of all these news articles, there's always comments and stuff, and I want to read you this one comment just to show you what it is. Oh, sorry. This morning's question is this: do we protect our borders or do we show compassion? Valid question because of all that's happening in the culture today, all that's happening in the world today. Do we protect our borders or do we show compassion? Check out this quote that was at the bottom of one of these news articles. It says this: if these hordes of refugees were anxious to assimilate into our culture, embrace our language, and become true American citizens like the Irish, Germans, and others in the 19th and 20th centuries, then I would not have a problem. However, one only has to look at the cities where these Muslims have settled, i.e. Dearborn, Michigan, and it's obvious that they intend to change the U.S., not themselves. We're going to hang right here on this slide for a second. Here's the deal. It's not whether or not you agree or disagree with this guy. It's not whether or not you vote Democrat or Republican or somewhere in between. It's not whether or not you think that our nation should protect its borders or show compassion to all of these refugees. That is not the point. The reason that I'm showing you these slides is for this and this only. It brings up a viable tension that we all have to wrestle with. Because anytime that we stop to help someone, anytime that we show mercy or compassion, it will cost us. It will cost us either our time, our resources, our energies, or as this guy was pointing out, it may cost us our cultural identity as the United States of America. It may cost us our safety. It may cost us something. There's always a cost when we choose to help somebody else, when we choose to show compassion, or when we show mercy. And so in this conversation, in this debate that's been going on since long before the presidential election, this idea of do we protect our borders or do we show compassion? That's the first thing that comes up, is we have to wrestle with this idea of what will it cost us if we help these people? What will it cost us if we show mercy and compassion? The next thing that comes up, if we go back to the slides here, we're going to look at our, to the next one here. This is our declaration. Oh, sorry. Let me add this to this thing. This helps a little bit. So this guy, he brings up some valid points, but here's the deal. Part of his struggle here is he doesn't understand what a refugee is. So to throw this out there, to be completely honest, as we move forward and completely fair, here is the definition of a refugee: a person who has been forced to leave their country in order to escape war, persecution, or natural disaster. So as we begin to think about whether we protect our borders or whether we show compassion, please understand this. Like he was saying in his statement, if they would just do this, this, and this, here's the deal. They don't want to be here. Refugees don't want to be here. I have good friends that work with refugees in Phoenix, Dearborn, Dallas, and in Jordan, working with all of them with Syrian refugees and other places as well. Here's the thing, the number one thing they all have in common: they don't want to be here. They'd rather be back home, but they had to leave because of the circumstances that are happening in their home country. They had to come to a place where they don't necessarily share our values, they don't share our language, they don't share our culture, all these kind of things, and they're having to assimilate to a place. They don't want to be here. So just keep that in mind as we move forward with this topic and this discussion. They don't actually want to be here either. So the first tension that was raised is whenever we help someone, it will cost us. Here's the second one. Going back to our Declaration of Independence on the next slide here, here's what the authors of our Constitution, the guys who founded our country, I think they're brilliant. Listen to what they said. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Here's what's so important. Here's what sticks out to me is our founding fathers acknowledge that there is a creator. They may not believe what you and I believe about that creator, but they acknowledge that there was a creator, and human dignity and human rights come from him, not from the government. Andy Stanley, who's much smarter and much better at articulating things than me, here's what he says about that statement. We are not a nation of compassion. We are not a nation of religion. We are a nation of laws, and those laws were derived from a source higher than and prior to the U.S. government. Then he goes on to say this: compassion and generosity inform our legal system, but we must not allow them to undermine our legal system. So here's what happens. Here's how this plays into this topic this morning of, do we protect our borders or do we show compassion? The first tension is this, that anytime we help someone, it will cost us. The second tension is this, is that we as Americans, and this is what separates us from so many other countries, is we have a sense of ought. There's a sense of that we should do the right thing, and we understand that the idea of the right thing comes from the fact that there's a creator who created things to be a certain way, and he told us what to do, and he's the one who gives humans dignity. He's the one who gives humans rights, but the role of the government is to protect those rights. And so therefore, we're not a nation of compassion and mercy, we are a nation of laws. And so the government is to enforce those laws. And so we have these two things, these two tensions that are both contributing to this big question of, do we protect our borders or do we show compassion primarily to these refugees that are coming to our nation? So this morning, we're going to get into Scripture. We're going to see a story and a conversation that Jesus had with a man, and I think it nails it on the head. So if you have a Bible or if you have a device with Scripture on it, would you please go to Luke chapter 10. Luke chapter 10. The first part we're going to read is not in your bulletin, but it will be on the screen in case you don't have a Bible or Scripture with you. The second part will be, and so I encourage you to look at that. And as we're turning there, Luke chapter 10, starting in verse 25, here's what I want you to know about this morning. My brother Ben was up here earlier. He did a communion meditation, and he kind of did what we call the SOAPs model. He was sharing from what he journaled this week. Around here, we think that Jesus is like the best thing ever. And so we think that the Bible's super important because it talks about Jesus and it helps us to know who he is, and not just know who he is, but to know him actually. And so Ben was doing what we talk about in our life journals that we hand out, that we encourage people to get into and read the Bible. We have a reading plan that we all try to go through together. And so what we're going to do this morning is, so many times, and I fall into this too, we think the guy on stage talking needs to know so much more than we do, and he's so much more qualified. And what he does with Scripture, we can never do, because there's commentaries. He's got to be, really good with Greek and all these kind of things. There's lexicons, there's all this kind of stuff, all these tools that we think he has to be so well versed in, so we can never know what he's knowing and never be able to do what he's doing. So this morning, we're going to do something different. I'm only going to share with you what I pulled out of this from doing soaps. There's one thing that we did, and I'll tell you what it is when we get there. But the reason I do this is not to be like, hey, if you would just read the Bible, you would figure this out on your own. That's not what I'm saying. The reason I'm doing this is like, if you would read the Bible, you would find this yourself. It's so amazing, the stuff that's in there. If we would take the time to read it, not to read it to be smarter, but to read it to have a better relationship with Christ. As Ben was saying earlier, we will have a relationship with him and grow in that relationship and that understanding as we do what he says, which is simply to love other people. So anyway, that's the first sermon. We're done with that. We're going to move on. Luke chapter 10, verse 25. Here's what he says, and this will kind of help us understand what's going on. One day, an expert in religious law stood up to test Jesus by asking him this question: "Teacher, what should I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus replied, "What does the law of Moses say? How do you read it?" The man answered, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, and all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "Right," Jesus told him. "Do this and you will live." The man went to justify his actions, so he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" So here's a couple things that are happening. First of all, an expert in the law, a religious leader, a lawyer, if you will, his job in life was to study the first 5 books of what we call the Old Testament. He was supposed to know the law of Moses that God had given to Moses, and so he could read, which was unique for a lot of them, and he could study it, and he was supposed to be teaching other people. And so here's the deal. By reading the Old Testament and by reading some of the Gospels, the New Testament stuff, the stories of Jesus, we can learn that God actually had these guys dressed a little bit different because of the role that they played in society and in their religion. And in the New Testament, they kind of start knocking on them because they got a little carried away and arrogant and cocky and this kind of stuff. And so they kind of started touting it around like they would wear special headdress, some stuff on their arms, certain clothing. And so people would know who they were and recognize them because they liked all the attention. So Jesus, when this guy comes up and all the people that are there watching this, like, Yep, we know who he is. He's an expert in the law. We can tell by the way he's dressed and the way he's talking. So he stands up to test Jesus, which kind of makes me think he's kind of like, let's see if the new guy on the block is really as smart as he thinks he is, and let's see if he's a heretic or a false teacher, and we need to put him in his place. And so that's why he's testing Jesus. And so he asks him a common question. What is the most important commandment? And he lays it out, and Jesus, being the man that he is, says, hey, you tell me, you're the expert in the law, what do you read? And so he lays out this thing called the Shema, which is the most important commandment. And then in my Bible, there's a footnote, it takes you to Deuteronomy and Leviticus, where it says the thing that he says, and to love your neighbor. And Jesus is like, that's right. If you do those things, you will live. And he says that because, again, the expert in the law and all the people around who would have heard that would have also known. In the Old Testament, it says, you will live, you will have eternal life, you have peace with God if you obey everything that God has told you to do. That's the way they operated in the Old Testament. They knew, hey, we have a relationship with God. He told us to do something. As long as we do it, we'll be in good standing with him and things will go well. So everyone here is like, yeah, that makes total sense. And then the guy needs to justify himself. And so again, no extra books need to tell me this. I'm thinking through my own life. What are the times when I felt I needed to justify my actions? First of all, either I know my actions are wrong, or two, if I need to save face. If I got called out on something or I'm embarrassed, I'm like, no. Let me stick up for myself. Let me justify what I did. Let me tell you why I did that. It's only because I feel like I need to save face. And so that's what's happening here is this guy, again, he's an expert in law. He tries to put Jesus on the spot to make him look stupid or like an idiot. And then he turns around and realizes, like, now I look like an idiot in front of all these people. So he's trying to save face and says, well, then who's my neighbor? And Jesus tells him a story because Jesus is a great storyteller and he knows what's going on. So here's the story that Jesus tells. You might be familiar with it. It's called the parable of the Good Samaritan. Here's what Jesus says. A Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and he was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him up, and left him half dead beside the road. By chance, a priest came along, but when he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. A temple assistant walked over and looked at him lying there, but he also passed by on the other side of the road. Then a despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. Going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn, where he took care of him. The next day he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, take care of this man. If the bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you the next time I'm here. Now, which of these 3 would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by bandits, Jesus asked. And the man replied, the one who showed him mercy. Then Jesus said, yes, now go and do likewise. So let's unpack this a little bit. All right, so here's the one thing that I couldn't figure out just by reading it. Someone had to tell me, Colin Nitcher, our pastor or minister of outreach, brought this to my attention. So geographically, Jerusalem is higher than the city of Jericho. And so in order for him to go from Jerusalem to Jericho, he literally would have been walking down a hill. And this hill apparently was pretty rocky and deserty. And so it was a prime place for bandits, for people who would highway robbery and stuff. They would hide out behind the rocks, see an innocent guy walking down, jump him, beat him up, rob him, and they could flee to the desert, and no one could catch him, even the Roman guards. And so everybody listening to Jesus, when they hear this story, a guy walking from Jerusalem to Jericho, like, oh, that's a bad road to be on, bad neighborhood, wrong place, wrong time type of thing. And so everybody just kind of knew that. So that's what's going on. All right, and so as he's going down this thing, so everyone knows that's a bad deal. Now, here's what we also know from reading the Bible. Jerusalem is the holy city. It's the capital city. That's where the temple is. The temple was the central part of their religion, central part of their government. All of the religious activities happened there, and that's where the priest would go and offer sacrifices, receive offerings, and do all this kind of things, because a priest is someone who goes to God on behalf of the people, okay? So that's what we know. So a guy from Jerusalem, going from Jerusalem to Jericho, he was probably coming from the temple where he was doing some kind of worship, either bringing a sacrifice or bringing an offering or coming to worship or whatever the case may be, coming to pray. He was on his way home. He gets mugged, gets robbed, all these kind of things happen. And then the next guy to come along is a priest. And so again, the priest is a guy who should know all this stuff because he would be one of the few people who could read and know God's law and know things that have been said, know some of the prophets and what they have said. Things like, I desire mercy and not sacrifice. Or if you're following along in our reading plan right now, we've been reading in Jeremiah this week. And God, through Jeremiah, says to his people, what's the deal with your fasting? What's the deal with your worship? All you do is you focus on yourselves and you get yourself all primed up. You go to the worship place, you do your thing, and you think, man, I've done a great job. When in reality, what I want you to do is to take care of the people who are poor. I want you to take care of the people who are hurting. I want you to take care of the people who are hungry and don't have a place to stay. This is what you're supposed to be doing. And so this priest would have known all of that better than anyone else. And he would have been coming from the temple probably on his term, on his time for service, where he would have been offering sacrifices, receiving offerings for God, offering these prayers for people, ministering to people. He comes down this road and he sees someone who's hurt, and he does like we're talking about with this idea of our borders, is he wrestles with these two things of tension. He knows if he stops, it's gonna cost him, it's gonna take his time. The guy clearly needs help, so he's gonna have to figure out the resources. And the reality is there's a good chance that those thieves are still waiting for someone else to stop so they can rob him too. And so he's like, I'm not touching that. Even though he knows the ought and the should better than anybody else in the country, he passes by on the other side of the road. The next person is a temple assistant, or a Levite as they called them. A Levite was a certain tribe of Israel, and they were set aside to work in the temple, to be the people who do ministry between God and the people of Israel. And so again, he would have known more about the law than anybody else. He would have known better what God said, what he really wanted people to do. And he was probably getting done with his time of service in Jerusalem. He starts to head down that road to Jericho. He also sees a man, makes the same assessment. This is going to cost me something, but I know what I ought to do. I know what God has said about helping those in need. And he passes by on the other side of the road. And the last person that comes through is a despised Samaritan. Now, here's what we know about the Samaritans as we read the Old Testament and the New Testament. So when the people of Israel had come into the promised land and God was giving it to them, there were certain people that they were supposed to drive out of Israel, out of the land that they were given, and they didn't get it all the way done. All right? And so some of the people of Israel who were told never to marry people that were there because they're going to get you to worship their gods and disobey the one true God. Remember, if you do what he says, he'll bless you and all those kind of things. And so these people became the Samaritans because they started to intermarry with people they shouldn't have. And then as we read in the New Testament where Jesus is interacting with people, we begin to see some of these tensions. There is political and there is religious and racial tensions between the Samaritans and the Jews. And so again, coming back to this idea of do we protect our borders or show compassion, all of the same sentiment, all of the same feelings and arguments that we experience as Americans going into that question, these guys were also feeling that. So much so, if we even just went back one chapter, in Luke chapter 9, Jesus is heading to Jerusalem, and they have to cut through a Samaritan village, and the Samaritans won't give them a place to stay or food to eat because they can't stand each other. That's how bad the tension has gotten, okay? So these people do not like each other, and so that's who Jesus picks to be the cursed person who comes across a man who's been beat up and mugged and left half dead. He's the one that Jesus picks to help him. He also would know the same laws. He also would weigh the same costs of helping someone, of showing mercy and compassion. But he decides to do it, even though the person who was lying there half dead is a declared enemy. And if that person weren't lying there half dead, would probably spout off about how much he hates the Samaritan and how much the Samaritan is inferior to who he is as a full-blooded Jew. But it says that he bandaged him, he attended to his wounds, picked him up, put him on his own donkey, which means that man was walking the rest of the way, took him to an inn, and left 2 silver coins, 2 days' wages, just in case the expenses went beyond that. He said, I'll be back, and if I need to, I'll reimburse you. I think that's absolutely incredible. So if you're doing the fill-in-the-blank thing, if there's anything I want you to know this morning, it's this. And this is actually a quote from one of the first sermons in this series that Barry said. He says, mercy known should lead to mercy shown. Mercy known should lead to mercy shown. What God is saying is this. Mercy is when I don't give you what you deserve. When you deserve the results of the consequences of your decisions, when you deserve to be punished, when you deserve to be left by yourself because you've isolated yourself by your words and your actions, when that's what you deserve, I come in and I show you mercy. And I come to your help. And so if you're really my people, talking to Christians, talking to people who call them followers of Jesus, if you're really my people, and you know what kind of mercy I've shown you, then you should be the first ones to show it to other people, regardless of what it'll cost you. Because here's what's beautiful, is Jesus is telling them a story that's really about what he's about to do. Because no one knew at that time what he was really gonna do, which was to die on the cross, to be beaten up, to be shamed, to be ridiculed, to be mocked, all for us so that we can be receiving mercy, the forgiveness of our sins, to not be sent to the place where we get what we deserve, to not be having to live in that loneliness and that darkness and that brokenness, but to be able to be in a place where we receive mercy from him. And he's like, this is what I'm going to do for you because I'm giving up. I've counted the cost and I'm giving up everything. My place in heaven where I'm ruling and I have authority next to my Father to come down here to live with you people and to love you unconditionally, and then to die for you, and then to come back from the grave. He weighed that cost, and he didn't do it because he should do it. He did it because he wanted to do it, because he cares about our relationship. It's so cool, and later in this book called Philippians, it's actually a letter. This guy, Paul, writes this thing. It's kind of like a rewrite of like a poem or a song. We don't know exactly, but here's what he says. He says, your attitude should be the same as that of Jesus Christ, who being in very nature God did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but instead he made himself a servant, becoming like a human being, and because he was found in the image of the man, he became obedient to death, even death on a cross. And so Jesus was the one who paid the price. He's the one who decided to show us mercy at his expense. And so what I want to challenge you to do this week is very simple, but it's not very easy, is to show mercy. To show mercy. And there's a couple ways I want to challenge you to do that. First and foremost, as we're on the topic and the question of do we protect our borders or show compassion, I want to challenge you to think through and ask yourself, how has my heart, how has my mind been infected by what I've been reading or hearing or watching in the news? Am I beginning to become fearful of other people? Am I beginning to become critical and judgmental of other people? Or do I have a heart of mercy towards other people? And if you're like me, you might need to do some praying on that. And so what we did is Colin and I bought some of these books. And I'm going to tell you what these books are. These are called the 30 Days of Prayer book, and here's why we're having them. Right now, the Muslim world is entering into a time that they call Ramadan. It's where they seek spiritual enlightenment by fasting and praying every day from sunrise to sunset. And so what we're doing as Christians is we're saying, you know what, let's join them in that. Let's begin to take 30 days and let's pray for them every day. And so here's the deal. You can grab one of these books at the welcome desk. You can take it. If you'll use it, please take it. If you're not going to use it, don't sweat it. Don't leave, just leave it here for someone else to take. But what it does is every day there's a different people group to pray for. And what it does is it tells you a little bit about who they are so we can have an idea of what these human beings are like and the life that they live and the things that they believe and what their day-to-day life is and how we can pray for them. Because when we begin to pray for people, God will soften our heart towards those people. When we begin to pray for people, we'll begin to have a desire to show them mercy. And when we begin to pray for people, there's a really good chance that God will not only change your heart, but give you an opportunity to actually meet these people and to show mercy to them. So I want to challenge you to get to a place where you take one of these books and pray for them every day. Over the next 30 days, my family's going to do it, and just watch what God does in your heart. Just ask God to give you a heart of mercy for these people as you pray for them to also find mercy. The other thing I want to challenge you to do is think through the people in your life, your family members, the people that you work with, your neighbors, fellow students, whatever the case may be. Who do you know that needs the same kind of mercy that we need? Because without a doubt, there's that person in your life that's kind of hard to love. They're the person that talks all the time, or it's always about them. They're always dramatic. Or maybe they just make decisions that you think are just foolish decisions, and they're getting themselves in situations and circumstances where they're just finding heartache after heartache, and you're like, what is wrong with these people? Or maybe it's the person in front of you in line at the store as you're checking out, or maybe it's the people that are driving around you. I don't know who it is, but there's a really good chance that God wants you to learn to have a heart of mercy for people. And so this week, as you find yourself getting frustrated or impatient with someone who's in front of you or around you, would you stop and ask God, help me to show this person mercy the way that you have shown me mercy? And then there's probably a group of people here that have never experienced mercy, that have never understood that the whole point of Jesus coming to this earth was not to condemn us, not to show all the dumb and bad things we do, but to show us mercy and to help us understand that we are so valued to him. that he was willing to pay that price to show us mercy so that we could have a lasting relationship with him. And so if you have not heard that before, or if you've heard it but you don't understand it, I would love to meet with you back there. There's an exit sign and there's a lamp that's on. I'll be back there. There's gonna be a prayer team back there. We would love to share with you. A young man came forward at the 8:15. He's like, I've never heard that before. Tell me more about it. That's what we're there for. Or maybe this morning you're in a place where you know that your heart is dark and crusty and you have a hard time showing people mercy, and you just need to come and talk about that and let us pray for you. So wherever you're at this week, whether it's accepting the challenge to pray throughout the time of Ramadan, the month of Ramadan, for those who are of a different religion, different worldview, or maybe it's to show mercy to the people around you, or maybe it's to come and receive mercy for the first time for yourself, I just want to take a moment to pray for you and encourage you and challenge you to do something with what you've heard this morning. In your bulletins, on the fill in the blank stuff on the back of that, there's questions. So we put the scripture on the front and the questions on the back. If nothing else, take that home, read that story again, and answer the questions on the back, either with a friend, a neighbor, someone you're eating lunch with or having coffee with. But don't leave here without taking the initiative to get into God's word and see what it has for you and how it can make a difference in your life. Jesus, thanks so much for who you are. We thank you that you showed us incredible mercy, that you don't give us what we deserve. And so, Lord, this morning I want to pray for all of the Muslims around the world who are going through Ramadan, Lord. I pray that you would help them to find you and believe the truth about you, that they would truly find peace, that you would come to them in dreams and visions, Lord, and you would reveal yourself to them. Father, I pray for all of my friends and family in this room right now, Lord, that you would help us to be merciful to other people as you have been merciful to us. And if there is someone who doesn't know your mercy, Lord, that you would give them the courage and the strength to come out and ask whatever questions they have or to be ready to make that commitment. We love you. It's in Jesus'